consumption and production of plastics, but that we're not adequately able to handle with the waste that this generates. If you look at plastic production, we can see that in 1950, there were 2 million tons of plastic that were produced globally. In 2000, we're around 200 million tons, and now we're approaching 500 million tons, and this is forecasted to grow to well over 1 billion tons of plastic in 2050. Now, these are astronomical numbers, and they're hard for me to really understand how much is 500 million tons of plastic. So I asked AI to calculate how high, if we dumped all the plastic, all the 500 million tons of plastic into the UN headquarters in Nairobi, how much would that be? And it turns out that there would be a mountain of plastic around 980 meters tall, which is much taller than the Burj Khalifa. So quite a lot of plastic that are producing every year. Now, if we look at what happens when this turns into waste, we can see from a recent OECD report that 46% is landfills, while 22% is mismanaged. So that means that 2/3 of all the plastic, when it turns into waste, are not adequately dealt with, at least from a circular economy perspective. Now, there's of course a reason why we produce this plastic. It is a unique material, and we need it for a lot of different things. We could not have this meeting today without the use of plastics, but we really need to consider how we're using it and also how to better deal with it when it turns into waste. Having said that, plastic is not only a waste problem. We have to really overcome the challenges of plastic. We have to consider the whole value chain and all the different challenges that it poses. We see lower demand for energy and transport for oil and gas. There'll be incentive to put more and more oil and gas into plastics. So there is a strong lock-in there. We can also see there are pollutants. So there is both NOx and SOx emissions from the production of plastics. And we have also seen that there are a lot of protests and demonstrations around new petrochemical facilities because of concerns from the pollutants that come from these sites. If we shift to the use of plastics, then we see that we are actually exposed to around 100,000 particles of microplastics every year through inhalation and ingestion. And those that we can see some of the responses already. Here's an overview of different restrictions on plastic bags, and we can see that this is a phenomenon that is taking place in countries across the globe, and these have been going on for the past few decades. There are now over 127 countries that have restrictions on plastic bags, and of course, Kenya was one of the first to do so some decades back. If we look at single-use plastic items, this is something that we see at coastlines, again, across the world. And we have also found that more and more countries are starting to put restrictions over the past year. So we have found that single-use 2015 and 2016 to 2020 and 21. And latest figures are actually pointing that this trend is continuing. So we have seen that although some of these policies, they might be slightly inconvenient, they can have and do have a lot of impact. The last thing I want to say is that, of course, we need some of these policies focus on bans and restrictions, but we need a lot of different types of policies that cover the whole value chain. Now, we did a study some years ago, and we found a lot of different policies and actions to make plastics more circular and more sustainable, and we grouped them into 3 different types of what we call pathways. The first one is smarter use, and that's to say that, of course, we need plastics. It is a vital part of our everyday life, but we need it in the right places. And we don't probably need a lot of plastics being flooded that are cheap and disposable, and which we don't really need. So we need to think of plastic as an important and crucial material, but we need to use it in the right places. The other thing is increased circularity, and that's, of course, we need to recycle. We need to capture and recycle a lot of the plastics to a much larger degree than we are today. But we also need to look at how we can reuse plastics and repair plastic products so they don't become waste in the first place. And the last one is a shift to, when it makes sense, we could consider other renewable materials to be used instead of oil and gas. So we can have, for example, bio-based plastics in those applications where it makes sense to do so, and that can help lower the CO2 emissions from plastics. And with that, I want to say thank you for inviting me, and have a great symposium.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Nilsson. It's given us a very, very insightful presentation that should set us up for the discussion that we are about to have. Mr. Nilsson is a circular economy expert at the European Environment Agency, where he focuses on the environment and climate benefits of circular economy. And he has been speaking to us, and I think he'll stay a little bit on to follow some of the discussions here. Now, the next presentation will come from inside this room, and the gentleman I'm about to introduce, Dr. James Joram Owuor, specializes in sustainable nanomaterials and environmental nanochemistry. He has received advanced training in nanotechnology from the leading institutions around the world, such as Switzerland, South Africa, and Germany. His research focuses on applying functionalized nanomaterials to address critical environmental challenges, including pollution control, water purification, and the development of biodegradable materials. Dr. Owuor is a lecturer at the moment in physical chemistry at the Technical University of Kenya. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Owuor as he comes up here. I hope by the end of it we will understand all those many things. Please, someone help us with the podium. You'll need that, won't you? Could you have someone help us with the podium up here?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Joe, I didn't know that Tobias gave you an elaborate description of what I've done. So when Tobias invited me, and I asked him, what kind of audience am I going to speak to? And he told me mostly diplomats. So I wondered if all those that Joe was describing as we work in the lab will really suffice. So I titled my presentation, The Sweet and Sour Story of Plastics. Ideally, plastics has a sweet side. And as we have been told, 10,000 decades ago, plastics was actually the chemistry's triumph. It was the silver bullet for chemistry. That's what we came to revolutionize medicine. It came to revolutionize, because if I ask you today, who did not deal with plastics from morning up to now? Almost everyone. In your kitchen, you are holding plastics. So if we say remove all the plastics from the world, it means all your cell phones will go. Everything about plastics will go. So it is a sweet story of plastics. It transformed vehicles. The vehicles that Joe probably used those days when he was growing up was more percentage metals. But then now we came to have lighter materials. And then, so plastic became like the superstar of innovation. And we chemists are guilty of bringing it. Now the sour state of it comes in. That's the next slide. The sour state of it is that after it has revolutionized, the next slide please. After it has revolutionized and brought in all these good things that we are now enjoying, we have been told about the production of about 430 million tons of plastics that we are having annually. And this is actually translating to about 7 billion tons, which is ending up into our environment. But does our environment have the sink to absorb it? That's the question. Can it take it in? Apparently not. So the other aspects that has been suffering is the marine, as we have had. Our oceans, our rivers, and it is also said that in the next 10 years or so, I'm just quoting what people are saying, that there will be more plastics than fish in our oceans and rivers. That's the sour taste of it. So it is choking our environment. It is choking our lands, because landfills, the previous presenters just said that he took it to AI and it said that the mound will be as higher than the, he talked of what? The tallest building in the world. So somehow we, people who cause the problem, must find a solution to it. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to bore you with the nanoplastic, because these are the insidious and the invisible threats, really. If we start looking at how the nano, the femto, actually bioaccumulate within our bodies, and the chemistry behind it, the biochemistry behind it, it is real, it is not imagined. But I will not bore you with that, because most of you are diplomats, and the young lady actually elaborated some of the methods that plastics can be managed with. So next slide, please. So what is the challenge in remediation? We have got a linear way of thinking: take, make, and dispose. Can we rethink it? That linear model is not working, so to speak. Take, make, and then dispose. We are trying to look at, can we recycle? But as the previous presenter showed us, yes, in EU they have about 30%, so to speak, 30% gain within a period of 10 years. Is it sustainable? That is the question we are supposed to be asking ourselves. And then when we consider the leakages and the efforts that have been made towards a portion of plastic escaping the formal systems that we've put in place, ending up in our natural environments. And this is the critical point of INC 5.2. So it's like we have a toothpaste that has already been put on the earth, and then we are trying to put it back onto the tube. Is it really possible? It is possible, but very difficult. Yeah, we have the paste outside, but we are trying to figure it out back into the tube. So can we do it? Think about it. So there are alternative strategies, and the previous speaker has spoken about circular vision. Refuse. We can have policies on refuse, banning of plastics. Interestingly, when Tobias was calling me, we were in a conference with KAM. What we are doing, I'm a member of the Kenya Chemical Society and a subject matter expert on chemical safety and security. So what we are doing is we have realized that we can stop this from source. And Kenya, through the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, which is also trying to, have what is called responsible care. And in responsible care is where the industry, without being pushed by regulation, that is, government is not pushing them, they are now adopting a way of dealing responsibly with chemicals, because plastics is chemicals. So if they can refuse by themselves, nobody is coercing them, not government pushing them, but they can regulate themselves. So they are trying to adopt responsible care. They are at an advanced stage. I think by June, maybe it will be launched, God willing. So the other aspect is reduce. We as a nation, and somebody alluded to in the high-level program, every nation has got its different needs for plastic, so to speak. So can we reduce, say that Kenya can say that the maximum cap of plastics that can come in is this much? Can we reduce the use of plastics? And if we cannot reduce, can we reuse what is available? And if we can reuse, can we recycle? And I will add, can we repurpose? But in repurposing, we also have to be very careful, because our grandmothers and our mothers in the village are very good at repurposing. But they can take something which is very toxic and repurpose it for food, which again creates more harm than good. So we have to be careful. Then, looking at the design, another speaker talked about the design. Let's think about green chemistry, the 11 principles of green chemistry, atom economy and the likes. What design principles can we adopt going forward? Think about them. Next slide, please. So, I won't bore you with the chemistry of how the biodegradation magic can work and all of you, because this is too technical for us to think about it. But then, now in Kenya, we are working on renewable materials at the lab stage. I'll give you a short story of how macadamia, and I will not mention the country. Macadamia has got a promise of making biodegradable plastics. But there is a country that we export macadamia nuts to, discovered this. And what did they do? They now want even the shells. And they tell the farmers, we will buy the shells at a cheaper price. So what are we essentially doing? We are giving them macadamia, the nuts, the fruit, plus the raw materials for our biodegradable products. And we are losing. So we need to think about how we can invest in the chemical recycling back. Next slide. So moving towards our INC 5.2, which is the legally binding, and it is our best chance of course correcting, because we chemists, we are good at making the problem. But you diplomats, you are good at making the solutions, negotiating treaties. So it's about the collective responsibility, the shared ambition, the designing of the future of where we want plastics to go. Because as the other speakers say, plastics are not bad, they are good. But how can we make use of what is available, not to choke the world? Next slide, please. So we need to, I've talked about the diplomacy, the equity and support, and now the actionable outcomes is that the treaty must be practical, it must be implementable, ambitious enough to protect human health and the biodiversity and the ecosystem, as the lady had told us. So the sweet outcome is that chemistry gave us plastics. Now chemistry, coupled with global collaboration and policy that you are experts, need to give us a solution to the choking environment. Somebody earlier on, I think it's the PS who said that we want to give an inheritance of the earth. No, we want to bequeath an earth. I want to leave my presentation at that point. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Owuor. So we'll try and run very fast to try and see if we can catch up with the time. So yes, the ground is set. We have been told, given very many numbers, close to 7 billion tons of plastic waste already in circulation. Dr. Owuor contends that it is tantamount to trying to put back the paste into the tube. And this figure is likely to rise exponentially as the world continues to produce an estimated 430 million tons of plastic every year. Now, to keep the momentum towards ending plastic pollution, member states must adopt strategic agility and creative building on the lessons learned from the other MEAs. The global community must therefore make every effort to find positive consensus on the unresolved questions around INC 5.2, and I will be bringing up here a few distinguished members of this audience to come and sit up here to help us unpack some of the issues around this. And I'm going to introduce them, and if I introduce you, please just mention your name and just start coming up here. There are seats here that have been waiting for you for the last 1 hour or so. So let me begin introducing my panel, Mr. Danny Radiancia. He's currently serving as Chargé d'Affaires and Interim Deputy Permanent Representative for UNEP and UN Habitat at the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in Nairobi. Besides his overall job there, his main responsibilities include spearheading Indonesia's interest in environment and urban settlement issues through cooperation with UNEP and UN Habitat. Welcome. Karibu sana. All right, please, I think you can sit there because you are the first one. Next, I'm going to introduce Mr. Griffiths Ochieng, who's a co-founder and executive director of the Center for Environment, Justice and Development, a public interest NGO working on chemicals and waste management, and is going to help us unpack issues around plastic. And last but not least, I'm going to introduce Mr. Tobias Otieno Ogweno, who is the Deputy Director and Head of the Environment and Climate Change Division at the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs here in Kenya. He is an accomplished diplomat with over 17 years of demonstrated track record in international relations and negotiations, as well as in international sustainable development policy making. Tobias, it's good to see you again, and I think I'm going to just start with you as we start this discussion. So we had the meeting in Busan, and here we are now heading to Nice and then heading to Geneva. How close are we to this legally binding instrument that we keep talking about?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good afternoon, colleagues and participants present and those participating online. I want to say that the issue of plastic is very complicated, and member states look at it from two diametrically opposed sides. There are those who believe that we should not go into the discussion of stopping plastic production, and there are those that believe that there is a way out. Plastics are not necessarily bad, but there is a way out of it. Now, the biggest challenge we have as member states right now, for those who are convinced, the converted, is to be able to impress upon those who are still doubting that something can be done. So that is, we have to unlock the politics of the hydrocarbon to be able to instill some confidence that we are not going to interfere with the production of petrochemicals, but we are simply tweaking the system. My view is, with respect to how close, I want to say it is doable. It is doable. From Busan 5, we had two critical outcomes. One, that member states were able to agree on the structure, at least the structure of that document. Then two, there was a very clear understanding on what can pass and what cannot pass. Now, when we go to Geneva, the issue would be to build on what was already agreed that can pass, and to be able to see how we narrow the differences. To my mind, I think it is doable and Geneva can deliver. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Radiancia. it's been said here, I think since we started, that there are a number of outstanding issues that still stand in the way of this agreement, and some of them have been mentioned about the issues that will need to be considered, the design of plastic design, production, waste management, and issues like those. What can be done to overcome this? Because I think it is now agreed that we have a real problem in our hands.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs of Kenya to allow us to participate as one of the convener of this symposium. And based on your question, sir, we know that the famous critical articles are Article 3, Article 6, and Article 11. It is about the plastic products, the chemical of concern, and the means of implementation. But first, I want to say that I want to echo what my brother Tobias says. Geneva is doable. Geneva can deliver. The key is to have that political will and really sense of urgency that we need to have this plastic treaty concluded. Otherwise, we will lose the momentum. We will face greater pressure from the international community. We will face greater pressure from youth, you know, from all the stakeholders here. But to answer your question, the issue of core obligations, which are currently mentioned in that Article 3 and 6, even though there are other, you know, in other articles, has to be in line with the ones in Article 11 and Article 12 as well, on the means of implementation, both on the financial sector as well as the non-financial. So it has to be balanced. From the previous statements in the high-level segment, we see that, you know, there is no point of return, if I may say. We need to go and we need to deliver on this. Even though we still have those disagreements or divergence of views, I think through this kind of forum, as well as for other, like the one in Geneva at the sideline of BRS, and then the upcoming UNOC 3 as well. And then finally, before Geneva, we will have the heads of delegation meeting, don't forget that, in Nairobi. So we will have to maximize all the avenues to really have heart-to-heart dialogue, I think, so that we can agree on what kind of treaty that we can that is doable, implementable, and ambitious enough. I think we need to have that as well. So I will not go too much detail. I will stop there, and we can continue later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ochieng, you come from the civil society side of things. You sit in the steering committee of the Toxic Plastic Working Group of IPEN and so on. What treaty format do you foresee, or do you think would garner the most support from members as we go along?
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me to the organizers to be again on this panel. So back to your question, as you just introduced us, we have a view within the civil society organization that this treaty should be very clear to protect human health and the environment. And so in that regard, the issues of chemicals has been, even from the previous presenter, what we call the invisible pollution, need to be part and parcel of that package. And from the previous speakers, we know that these are areas that has some kind of divergent views, and particularly the articles that we are talking about that mentions issues of chemicals. From the discussions in Busan, of course, as Tobias put it, there's been a bit of pushback on this issue. And the reality and the science on the ground shows that these chemicals that are additives to the plastic, are linked to various diseases or concerns for human health. So as we go to this treaty, we look at it from the point that there should be focus as priority on these articles that are important for the treaty to have the ambition that was envisaged in the Resolution 514. So this is to ensure that there is discussions on these key articles in advance of INC 5.2. And when I talk about the issues of those chemicals, and particularly from how you introduced, a need for have science-based criteria of identifying the chemicals or the problematic plastics. And of course, looking at how we already have some treaties, like the Stockholm Convention that we've just come from, because it deals with the persistent organic pollutants. And some of these chemicals that are added in plastics, even for us here in Kenya, my organization has done a lot of research on products around in the market, like toys. These need to be, become the first initial list if we are to agree to make sure that the Geneva delivers. So this becomes the initial list that can be agreed universally, that this one we need to deal with them, because they're already covered within other conventions, which all the parties, many parties have signed to. So I look at it that this is some of the important provisions that our discussions and negotiations, and very important for us if we are to achieve a treaty that protects human health and environment. Thank you.
I haven't heard you say that Geneva is doable, as the previous two speakers. I wonder what your prognosis is of what lies ahead in the next cycle of negotiations when INC 5 resumes.
Yeah, we have views, particularly, and as I alluded to, that there is this Article 3, 6, and 11, there's need for some advanced discussions. We have opportunity at the heads of delegation, which is an informal meeting, to be able to look at how then there can be divergence. And what happened in Busan, over 100 countries, spoke and pronounced themselves on the importance of these articles. So if you already have over 100 countries, there's need for that political goodwill, as mentioned by the previous speakers, to be able to converge and bring on board the others, because we are not talking about eliminating plastics, I think has been mentioned, but we are talking about some concerns around some plastics and the additives or the design of how the plastics are made. Because the reality is that in developing countries, we have a lot of challenges with lack of identifying some of those chemicals that are in products that come into the country. So there is need for that agreement. So it's doable if there is political goodwill to bring on board all the other countries, because there's already momentum with over 100 plus countries, and because the obligations that we are talking about, and when we talk about financing, it comes with some core obligations. So in terms of control measures that we need to have, you're going to put money to address some obligations that you've put. So that's why we are talking of as a package within the civil society organizations now, that we can talk about the package and then they can elaborate on the package as we continue. Thank you.
Tobias, there's always contention. It doesn't matter what is being discussed about financing mechanisms, about resource mobilization, and these have also proved to be contentious in this. I don't know where you see what you diplomats like to call the landing zone for this disagreements that we are seeing around this critical question of money, quite frankly.
Yes, thank you very much. The way I look at it, the issue of plastic funding can be looked in terms of money that comes from the private sector and money that comes from the public. So while we are doing the negotiations around this, we have to put that in mind. Now, when it comes to the private sector, there has been this debate that how will the treaty compel the private sector to contribute money towards funding elimination of plastic pollution, which is a very legitimate concern. But I think there are programs or schemes that have been tried. Here in Kenya, we have the extended producer responsibility. Those of you who have followed what's happening in Nairobi, I think the National Environmental Management Authority was able to do a mapping of all the factories that are situated along the rivers within Nairobi and to identify the sources of pollution to those rivers. So currently, there is that discussion between NEMA and those industries on how they can clean back what they have done. So in terms of the private sector, mostly it will work within the countries. The countries will have to come up with their own rules and laws to be able to do this. Now, at the global level, we have to appreciate that the issue of ending ending pollution is basically amounting to advancing the achievement of global public good. Now, when we talk about the global public good, we talk about good health, we talk about a stable environment, we talk about climate change, dealing with it. Everybody benefits. Now, in that case, we have to put money somewhere, a kitty that is global in nature, that everybody can get access to the funds to be able to implement projects that can curtail pollution that is caused by plastics. There are three ways we can do it. One, we can have the funding domiciled within the global environmental facility. And in the previous meetings we've had, the GEF has always come very strongly that we are already in this space. The last time we were in Busan, they said they had put close to 800 million to be able to do some projects on this. So the GEF option is there. The second, and I would think the most preferable option, would be to create a dedicated funding mechanism. Because you see, money for the GEF is being accessed by all. But now, if we have this, I think it will be specifically for plastics, the way we have the one for the ozone, the substances that deplete the ozone layer, the most successful layer. And the third option could be a blend of financing. We could get from the private sector, we could get GEF, you could get other philanthropic organizations coming in to be able to tap in, and then countries can leverage on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Radiansia. We are discussing this at a time when there are many challenges around the world, particularly with regard to multilateralism, and I will not go into too many details around that, but thinking about where this could end, how do you see this linking a little bit more effectively with what already exists, i.e. the international environmental agreements that are there in place today? Because the trend seems to be towards bringing things together rather than proliferating.
Thank you very much. Yes, from the beginning of this negotiation and throughout the INC process, what we keep saying is this instrument or this treaty should not encroach or should not duplicate what has been done by other MEA, especially the BRS. Of course, we cannot deny that there are some overlapping issues and also about the scope of the BRS itself with regard to like the list of chemicals, for instance. If I understand correctly, in BRS, there are only around 800 substances that are already listed, while in the context of the plastic negotiation, there are more than 3,000 substances that needs to be listed. But in principle, we should not really encroach what BRS has been doing. Instead, we have to learn from what BRS success stories as well as lesson learned, and then really focus on the plastic issue, the plastic pollution issue, and not so that it can be synergized with the BRS convention. That would be my take on how this new plastic treaty can really contribute in the realm of chemical and pollution conventions as well. But since I have the floor, allow me just to take up a bit of what the previous speakers mentioned, because I think it's very important. First is about the financing mechanism, the money that Tobias mentioned. What I agree with him that we need to have that financial mechanism, the dedicated financial mechanism for long run. I think that is the most viable option. But what I want to emphasize here is we should not, we should avoid financing gap in the beginning or in the earlier phase of the implementation, because looking back from the previous MEAs, I learned that there are some years of financing gap between the adoption of the convention until the implementation of that convention, because we did not have money. So in our view, whether we use the JEF, for instance, in the early phase of that implementation, or we have other voluntary contribution, for instance, I think it's good, it's okay. As long as we can start from the beginning of when we adopt the treaty until we have that financing mechanism for long run. That's number one. And then I think I also want to also add what you mentioned, sir, about the format, how we see, what kind of format that the treaty can be. Because I understand, you know, if we look at MEA, there are the framework conventions, like UNFCCC, the ozone, the Vienna Convention, and then we have also the specific convention, like the BRS Minamata thing. I don't want to go into detail, but I just want to put that, flag that issue. We need to discuss what the format of the treaty that we want, because from the discussion that I've been hearing so far, the idea is, okay, we need to have the treaty adopted in Geneva, and then we can develop further, you know. So that, I think, gives an indication of what kind of format treaty that maybe, you know, can be agreed by all of us, hopefully. So I'll stop there, thank you.
All right, so this is what we're gonna do. As soon as Mr. Ochieng finishes answering the question I'm about to ask him, we'll get a few from you here. So if you have a question, a comment, some contribution of whatever nature to this conversation, please get it ready, because in the next few minutes we'll be coming to you. But let me come to you, and this is from the civil society perspective. There have been a lot of discussions around looking at this from a human rights, social justice perspective and all of that. And I think that view is accentuated in this part of the globe, the global south, as we look at it. So where do you see this from the civil society side, from that human rights, social justice angle, but also, aren't there also benefits that the global south could tap into should this treaty come to light?
Thank you for that question. I maybe just start by, as you put it, the right, the social justice. But I just want to shock you that from the civil society perspective at the moment, they are very much concerned because their voices are already out of the discussions. Civil society has been locked out of some of the sessions. Like in Busan, they were locked out of a number of sessions. And we've raised our voices, particularly through the INC's chair, to the bureau, to the secretary. So we hope this change, because we are talking about social justice. We are talking about right holders that are affected or impacted. When you talk about the waste speakers, they are at the front line when it comes to the impact of plastic pollution. So if their views are not already embedded in the discussion, then we are looking at a top-down kind of policy approach, which should be reversed. So the discussions have advanced around the inclusivity, or rather the need to have the social justice, the human rights, and I already alluded to how these rights are kind of, denied. Because first, there is the populations that are affected. These could be populations that are around areas of dam sites, particularly in the context of Global South, the waste speakers that I've talked about, the social justice, how do they advance their right to participation or the right to know? And these are, and that we are talking about within the discussions in Article 3, for instance, transparency and traceability. You need to be able to know what is in a product that you're handling. But at the moment, this is not provided in the name of business confidentiality. So when you talk about the invisible pollution or the hazardous toxic material, so you have to have that right to know, which is one of the rights that are embedded in other conventions. And participation, Haru's convention is a good example that provides for participation of civil society organizations and right holders. And if you follow this, it will be very important as we go to Geneva that this issue of locking the civil society to deny them the right to air their views should be reversed.
Thank you. I hope the two gentlemen will speak about that at some point. But let me just get some voices from the floor. Oh yeah, and there's one hand here. There's one here. This side, you have absolutely no comment. That is fine. On this side, anyone? Anyone? Okay. So let's start with the two gentlemen here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, there's a lady behind there. Okay. So as soon as the two gentlemen finish, then you give her, so we can take the three at a go.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's Tony who...
Maybe you say your name, affiliation, that would help us to
my
place
name is Emmanuel Lucera. I am a research fellow at the Afro-Asia Institute of Strategic Studies. Tony was talking about financing. And when you talk financing, what comes into my mind is the cost. And you know, plastics are way cheaper than the natural exfoliants. And in Kenya here, we did an experiment that, I call it an experiment because I did not see the results with the Ministry of the Environment, and I'm happy that the director is here. They came up with a policy to ban plastics. The result of that is that a lot of people lost jobs. And currently, when you go to everywhere in the supermarket, you find that sugar is still in plastics. A lot of items, bread, even behind you, just behind you, have some balloons there. So now, the thing is, the issue of the cost, because that is the implication of the common people, especially in Africa and Asia. How are you tying your policies with collaboration with especially the people of academia, because Professor was here talking about the nano plastics. How are you collaborating with academia? Because academia not only informs, but it directs policy. So in terms of policy,
okay.
And I want you to think about the cost.
All right.
The last thing on the guy of the civil society, I wanted to address him. Why are we in this space? Why are we always saying we want to be involved? What is your contribution on this? Do you want to sit there as placeholders to complain, or do you have any concrete solutions towards the problems of the plastics? Thank you.
Okay. There was another hand here. Okay, then you can take it to the back. There was a lady who had a question as well. Over there, next to the camera. Was there a third person? Because I'll be happy to take three. Yes, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Eda Kapkia, a youth leader from Elgeyo Marakwet and a founder of Hagasida Foundation. And mine is to echo what Mr. Tobias, I think, Mr. Tobias said, the inclusion of these companies, the manufacturers of this plastic, producer responsibilities. That's the only way and the easiest way to actually get finance, because they're the ones who are producing these plastics that we are trying to get away with. So they are the ones who are supposed to hold them accountable. And maybe the next time when you're having a panel, it will be nice if you actually invite them to be part, so that we can hear their views, and we can actually, they can actually get the information that we are trying to get it out there. Because Most of the time we are seated here as aspiring diplomats, making these decisions without them, yet they are the ones causing this mess. Also partnering with them will also bring, as the guy there asked about employment, such partnerships is what creates employment. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have this gentleman here.
Thank you very much. My name is Lawrence Kishane. I am trainer in ESG and sustainability. I've been working around this area of issue of plastics and trying to see how we can try and work towards an environment that is clean. But now, upon this symposium, I've gathered something that I'd like to get to understand, especially when it comes to the issue of financing. I'd like to know how these industries that are being given an opportunity or the areas to dig into financing are going to be held accountable in terms of trying to see that whatever they are trying to mitigate is uniquely linked with what or the health part of the individuals. Secondly, I want to know how possible and viable it is to move from the biodegradable aspect of having these plastics and making them more viable in terms of, say, getting the profit part being enhanced towards biodegradable materials, as opposed to having them just be done the way it is, yet claim that they are going to have something more improved towards human use. And probably I think the focus towards just symposium should be taken out of these halls. How are we doing about the conversations out there?
Okay. Thank you very much. So I don't know where we want to start, but Tobias, there's one that was directed at you on the financing, and Emmanuel talks about the cost, and he's saying there are jobs involved. So basically an economic dimension there to this whole plastics question, and what are there really viable alternatives in a situation such as what we have here, and I would assume the rest of the global south.
Yes, thank you very much. Of course, people usually resist change, and change does not come easily. But where there is a will, there is a way out. This country, we have been able to take some significant steps. One of them was to pass the law on banning single-use plastics. We've gone ahead and passed legislation, the Sustainable Waste Management Act of 2024, and we have also developed the EPR regulations, the Extended Producer Responsibility Regulations, to be able to see how we address this. Now, in terms of costing, whenever there is some change, there must be additionality. That we appreciate. But I saw during the COVID-19, some of the companies in this country that were producing plastics were able to retrofit their companies to be able to produce those masks. So where you say an opportunity is closed, another door opens. That's one thing. The second thing I would like to say is with respect to how that transitioning will be done. Of course, for this country and the world to be able to transition in a just way, governments will have to provide some kind of incentives. Because, I mean, it could look very expensive to transition to biodegradables right now. So that would mean there must be some incentives given to those companies that are doing biodegradables at the additional cost that is on the part of those producing the regular plastic, which is harming the environment and killing human beings and biodiversity, have to meet that additional cost. So, but this is something that cannot be agreed at the national level, at the global level. Once we agree that we are going to finance this thing, as I said, there are 3 stages of doing it. One of them, countries will have, especially when it comes to the private sector, those countries will have to pass their own indigenous law or domestic law, which are consistent with the way they do their policy making.
Okay. Sarah Diansel, you want to try that?
Yes, thank you. Couple of points. From the first speaker, I want to respond on your question related how to connect your policy and the academia or scientific community. So basically, what we do in our country, I have to admit it's not from INC1, it's from INC3 that we started to really engage with academic at university to really see on the details from the scientific perspective on all these propositions that are being discussed. Because in the beginning, it was only Embassy of Indonesia in Nairobi, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Ministry of Environment. And then we try to, like a broken record, informing our stakeholders back home in Indonesia, this is something very important we need to hear from many other stakeholders. So, alhamdulillah, from INC3, we start to get all those inputs from scientific community. And we also have some peoples in Indonesia who are part of the scientist coalition, who are very active in providing inputs to the INC process. And then from the second speaker, I just want to respond on the how to make private company more accountable. Just want to quote from the minister's presentations in the morning. What we are trying to do from the regulatory perspective is to strengthen the EPR regulation, the national EPR regulation, from the level of ministerial decree into a presidential decree. So it will be more binding and it can be more enforceable to the companies. I'll stop there so that I can get...
all right, Mr. Oh, did you want to add something? You could make it quick. So
Yeah, I just want to make something very quick with respect to what Danny was saying, that the funding, some of it, especially should also go to research and development. We met with the ICIPE. I don't know whether they're in the room here, the International Center for Insect Physiology. They paid a courtesy call on the ministry. And we realized there's so much research going on there, including they have identified some type of insects that actually feed on plastics. So if that kind of technology can be cascaded and escalated, I think it would also provide. So the point is, some of the financing that we are looking for must go into research and development.
Okay, so Mr. Ching, there was a question you were asked by Emmanuel. I, for a moment, thought it was unfair, but when I looked at you, you didn't look too upset, so I just said, okay, you could answer it. Why do you want to be involved? Is it just to be a placeholder, or is there a tangible contribution that you have made so far, or that you would like to make?
Thank you for that question. This was interesting. Thank you. So I look at it this way. So you talk about civil society organization. We have broad range of civil society organizations. We have what we call the right holders. So they may include indigenous peoples, they may include waste workers, they may include NGOs, they may include the public who are through coming together in any form of association and among others. And why? The reason why it's important is that we are talking about coming up with a treaty that address this group of people, either through protection of human health and environment. So first you have to allow them to express themselves in a way that it is in the treaty, in the international convention we are talking about. Then the civil society brings the reality on the ground. They bring the issues that are affecting or impacting different people. So in that way, they set agenda on the conversation. Let me give you an example. The conversation around the plastic treaty and the issue of chemicals and human health was an agenda that was set by the civil society organization. My network, IPEN, when we met in 2022, the conversation even when before in UNEA 3, it was about protection of marine litter. So it was about waste into the environment. So it was basically the waste. But we didn't talk about the invisible pollution until IPEN has worked over 22 years within the BRS conventions, brought in terms of engagement with government studies that have shown the impact of the availability of chemicals in plastics. It set the agenda. Now the conversation within the treaty is broadly on issues of protection of human health and environment and chemicals. Secondly, civil society organizations play a watchdog role. You imagine if it was just the duty bearers in the space to develop a treaty, how will we know that we are making progress or its effective implementation? So we play a watchdog role on what our government commit to do, and then we put up them accountable to those commitments. So I would go on, and we can have a discussion. Thank you.
There were some questions from this gentleman. I don't know if there's anyone who wanted to go at them. I wasn't sure I understood everything he was saying about financing, about accountability, and also just, I guess, how to make the biodegradable plastics more profitable, or did I miss it? Does that capture anything that you were saying? Okay, so somebody give him a microphone, because I think there's something that was lost in translation. We just want to make sure that he goes home a little bit happier than he came. No, not you. The other one. If I give you the microphone again, I'm sure now Mr. Ochieng here will be upset. But anyway, yes, please just articulate one of your questions as clearly as you can so that at least you get an answer.
Yeah, the comment was basically about working towards the value chain in terms of that biodegradable aspect. How convinced are we in terms of having the end user part, in the sense that you'll hold these people accountable, regardless of whether the financing is coming in from them, to upgrade to that area? Maybe yet that may not be their area of interest. They just want to stick within where the money is, as opposed to trying to transition to something that is going to assist. Yet that was not the whole idea behind the agenda.
Let me try to respond to that. I think what the gentleman said first in my note is how industry to be held accountable. I think this has to do with the collaboration between the government side and the private sector side. And this is through the regulatory framework, which again goes back to the EPR that I mentioned earlier. And when it comes to this biodegradable plastic, my minister also mentioned it in his presentation. But I think this is something that what I want to quote from Tobias, this will need like a research process, and it will take some additionality in terms of resources, in terms of time as well. So I think it will be a gradual process, but the political will is there. I mean, we want to replace the undegradable plastic that can harm our environment to the more friendly biodegradable plastic. That is my take on the gentleman's question.
Okay. I know that there's so much to say, but when I look at my watch, we are way past our time. So I'm just going to say that whatever question you have, this gentleman, I think, when I look at them, I think they will stay here for maybe another hour or so. But I wanted us to just listen to them, get some final thoughts from them, so that we can end this session on a more conclusive note. So let's start from Tobias, and then we will go all the way to Mr. Radiantia.
So my final thoughts on this matter is that the world is presented with an opportunity to be able to deal with the plastics. We can start with the legacy plastic, which according to the presentations we had here, is about 7 billion tons already circulating in the environment. We can start cleaning up that as we develop mechanisms to be able to do this. But to do that and to harmonize the actions of member states, we must get a treaty at Geneva.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize what I talked about. That as we go to Geneva, we have to agree on a package, as I said. So one that has upstream measures or the control measures, which is already having support of many countries, and which linked to the issue of financing. So this need to be the conversation that we need to have a dialogue on how we can be able to, converge on the areas that we are having the differences. Because the reality is that we have the UNEA 514 that pronounced itself to have a treaty that comprehensively addressed plastic through a full life cycle approach. And this includes life cycle from production to end disposal. So that is important that we have that package supported so that we can have a treaty in Geneva.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My final message to every one of you is please be noisy. Please use the time from now until Geneva to, to swarm your social media platform, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and don't hesitate to tag me in your post so that I can see your post and I can comment, or I can take your views and then bring them to my colleagues in Jakarta. So please, I think we need all the input from you, from everybody. Whatever voice, whatever view you have will be very useful to contribute to the successful conclusion of this negotiation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So you have listened to them, great points coming through. I think the optimistic thing that we've had this afternoon, that Geneva is doable. Of course, there are a lot of heavy lifting that is still left with regard to this legally binding treaty that is being negotiated, whether it is with regard to the scope, whether it is financing, the question of inclusivity that I think Ada there mentioned and everybody has talked about. But really, bottom line is that there is an opportunity to do something about this challenge that now we cannot run away from anymore. One of my friends said that diplomacy is like group work. We're at a university, so that makes sense. Because everybody thinks it is important, but very few people are willing to do the heavy lifting. I do hope that the ones in this room will be willing to do the heavy lifting when the time comes at INC 5.2. My name is Joe Agayo, and this is where we end this discussion. Please give a round of applause to my panel here. Haven't they done a great job? Was that for me or for them? Anyway, so we are going to take a break and come back here. I think 40 minutes is good. So we come back at 5 minutes past 2. Is that fair? Yeah? We'll take a lunch, snack break, and then we come back here at 5 minutes past 2 o'clock, because in the afternoon we'll have another illuminating panel discussion revolving around UNOC 3. All right. Thank you very much.